I feel like my entire world is crumbling around me. I squeezed my eyes shut. A ball of emotion had materialized in my throat, and no matter how hard I tried to swallow, it wouldn't go down. I folded my hands and bit down on the knuckle, trying my best to stave off the eventual panic attack that was ensuing. "It'll be alright, Mom," Tara said. I opened my mouth to respond, but the words were caught in my throat. How did she know? I peered up at the girl and found her smiling coyly, the steam from the mug of coffee distorting her face. "I need to use the bathroom," I said before abruptly standing up from my chair. I threw all of the pictures back into the box and shoved it across the table. My outburst didn't seem to faze Tara in the slightest. The next couple of hours were a blur. I don't really recall much after my interaction with Tara in the kitchen, my sane mind giving way to the worst panic attack I've ever experienced in my life. Questions which no sane person should ever have, swirled around in my mind. Are these people really my family? Is it possible for someone to shapeshift? Either way, I had to make a plan soon. Sam would be home at any moment. I sat in a space between the wall and the toilet, trying my best to calm my nerves. I'll gather my things tomorrow when Sam is gone and leave when the girls aren't around, I thought. That seemed to be the best course of action, the only one. Even if I was losing my mind, I had to get away from the source of it. There's no way these people are my family. I cautiously sat up from my spot on the floor and quietly walked over to the door. I held my breath, afraid that making even the faintest noise would result in my sudden death. I had no reason to feel this way, but I just did. I reached for the doorknob, counting to 3 in my head. 1, 2, 3. 3 small knocks emanated from the other side of the door. My entire body went stiff. My blood ran cold. My hand instinctively recoiled from the doorway as I stepped backward. Finally, the silence was broken. "Honey, Tara's telling me you don't feel well." The sympathetic yet stern voice called out to me. It was the man masquerading as my husband. I remained still, silent. "Please come out. I just want to talk to you. No one's upset." He beckoned to me. I wish I would have stayed held up in the bathroom. How even calling the police and getting admitted would have been a preferable alternative to what happened after I finally gave in to his pleas. The rest of that afternoon and into the evening went by as normally as it could have. I sat at the kitchen table while my husband prepared dinner. The girls played quietly, remarkably quietly, in the living room close by. I got up from my spot at the table and peered out of the garden window, watching a pair of doves fly in circles, playing with one another. I wished so badly that I could have been one of those birds, so that I could fly freely away from this place. I feel trapped, as though they would stop me if I attempted to escape. I turned away from the window, from the beautiful creatures which played amongst the newly green trees, to find these people in my home staring at me. The hamburger which sizzled and popped over the flame on the stove was the only thing staving off the silence. The man watched me, studied me, with wide eyes as I folded my arms and backed away. I peered into the living room to find the girls doing the same, their toys cast aside as they stood and stared holes into me with cold, dead eyes. I was just looking out the window. Is everything okay? I stammered, stumbling over my words. They soon returned to what they were doing before, as if their behavior wasn't completely bizarre. I'm stuck between the anxiety of being the one in the wrong, worrying that I've truly lost my mind and am now throwing it in the face of my perfectly normal family who's trying to help me stay sane. On the other hand, I can't help but feel that my life is in danger, that these people around me aren't who they seem to be, the small primal piece in the deepest part of my brain screaming at me to run away. I walked to the kitchen sink, pouring a glass of water to help soothe my heavy chest and rapid heart rate. That did little to calm me. "Dinner is ready," Sam said sternly, emphasizing every syllable in his words. I turned quickly to find my entire family sitting at the table, their faces contorted and marred with anger. I'm not sure if I was just lost in my own little world at this point, but I swear I didn't hear a single footstep or noise as they all gathered for dinner, which is highly unusual considering these people are usually very loud. The rest of the night went on similarly to this, small, nearly indescribable oddities showing themselves in the form of my family's weird behavior. Sometimes I'd catch them watching me, all of them watching me, studying me as though I was a lab rat or something. It was deeply unsettling. Finally, the most dreaded time of them all was upon me. Bedtime. I felt a growing sense of sickness take hold of me as the idea of sharing a bed with that man was nearly unimaginable. I feel as though my life is at stake. If I don't play along with these wicked games, that something bad will happen. I crawled underneath the covers and laid on my side, away from my husband. I curled my body as tightly into a ball as I could, wishing that I could simply vanish from my existence. God would not afford me such a liberty. Sam laid stiffly next to me. He had watched me very carefully with each step I took into the bedroom. I had been laying there in the fetal position for about half hour before the silence was finally broken. "You're so stupid, you know that?" he said. The hate in his voice cut through the air like a knife. My heart started pounding once more. I could hardly breathe. "It took you a long time, Cindy, a long time." He laughed, a wheeze of air escaping his throat before continuing. "I didn't think it would take you this long to notice. 18 human years." He clicked his tongue in dissatisfaction and disappointment at my ignorance. I felt like I had gone into shock, my voice finally returning to me after a few minutes of silence. "What do you mean?" I whimpered. I could feel the weight in the bed shift as he sat up, and even with my back to him, I could still feel his eyes scanning over me. "You and I both know what I mean. You finally got it. You caught on. Now you know the truth, or some of it," he replied. My blood ran cold, like ice, at the last thing he said. "What do you mean, some of it? Where's the real Sam?" I cried out, clenching my eyes shut and gritting my teeth. "I am the real Sam. It can be hard to maintain an appearance over a prolonged amount of time for our species." I couldn't believe what the man was saying to me. "You know, I can be anything you want me to be. Anything." I felt sick from his poisonous words, which were becoming more distorted and robotic the longer he spoke. I could feel a distinct wetness brush up against my arm. I jerked my arm away, but it was no use. What felt like a slimy tentacle had wrapped around itself around my bicep and held me firmly in place. I opened my mouth and tried to scream, only for a massive dark hand to clamp tightly over my mouth. "Shh, it's gonna be okay, baby," the creature said. Its voice was ragged and harsh. Waves of its foul breath invading my nostrils nearly caused me to vomit. "I'm going to give you one more chance. Either start acting right, or I'll make you act right." Its grip on my arm and mouth eased as I brushed them away, trying to catch my breath. I turned my attention to the side of the bed the creature was on, but nothing. It wasn't there. "I'm up here, honey," it bellowed, causing me to jump and peer up at the ceiling. The creature's arms and legs extended to the corners of the bedroom, like a massive daddy-long-legged spider. Its body was twisted and knotted, the knobs of its spinal cord protruding from its pale flesh. Various parts of its back and stomach pulsated angrily, as though it could explode at any moment. The worst part was its head, which was twisted backwards, revealing the face of Sam as I had first met him. "I can be anything, even your worst nightmare," it gargled out. Globs of thick spit and fragments of teeth fell from its mouth and down onto me. The disgusting bile which poured onto my skin burnt horribly, causing me to roll out of bed and onto the floor. I bolted for the door, pumping my legs as quickly as I could. I flung the door open, causing it to crash violently against the wall before my journey came to a sudden halt. Outside of my bedroom stood our two girls, looking up at me with huge, black chasms where their eyes should have been. A putrid green substance trickled freely from the exposed sockets of the eyeballs. I gagged and pushed forward, shoving the two out of my way. The front door was just a couple feet away, my one-way ticket to freedom. When I emerged into the outdoors, I was met with a cool drizzle which fell from the black sky. I ran for what felt like hours, like days, before I finally collapsed from exhaustion. The last thing I remember was how badly my lungs burnt and the putrid smells which still clung to the inside of my nostrils. The events I've just detailed for all of you happened over the course of 2 days, about a week and a half ago. I was discovered by a squad car about 3 miles outside of the house I had fled. After a couple hours of questioning, they decided it was best to send me to the psychiatric ward in a larger city neighboring ours. Obviously, telling the officers about my husband turned spider demon wasn't the best reason for why I was laying in a ditch off the side of the highway. Either way, I'd rather be labeled as a delusional psychopath rather than go back to the hellhole I'd escaped. That brings us to the events which transpired this morning. I was lying in a bed, I've got my own room here, when the doctor politely knocked on the door before entering. He quickly stepped over to the computer which sat next to a bunch of other machines I wasn't quite sure of. "Well, miss, I have some good news and some bad news," he said, turning to me. He was wearing a mask which obscured his face, but his blue eyes seemed haunting, piercing into me. "What's that?" I said quietly. "Well, Cindy, the good news is that you're definitely of sound mind. However," he removed his mask, revealing the horrors which had lurked beneath. "The bad news, for you at least, is that you'll be coming back home with me tonight."